welcome to Author Showcase. I'm Tom Cannon with...
I'm Dixie Jarko.
And I'm K.M.Waldvogel.
Today we're talking to a children's author who has the book, which title is The
Three Little Ghosts.
The Three Little Ghosts.
Yeah, you're right.
So tell us about the book, how it started and what...
It started because my husband and I spent Halloween with our 3 grandchildren at that time, and they were so excited about Halloween. They loved the costumes, they loved the decorations. At that time they were 1, 3, and 5.
Oh, that's fun. Fun ages.
And they loved the trick-or-treating, they loved to see the neighbors in the costumes. And I got home again and I was so excited about seeing them that I sat down and I started to write 3 Little Ghosts about the 3 grandchildren. And then over a couple years I edited and revised the book, and I now have 4 grandchildren. But I didn't think I should change the title to 4 Little Ghosts. I thought it should stay as 3 Little Ghosts.
You'll have to write another book for the 4th ghost.
But I did get the 4th name on the dedication page,
Uh-huh.
so it's dedicated to all 4 of them.
Okay. And so where could they purchase this book?
Well, it's available on Barnes & Noble and Amazon, but locally, or I should say on this side of the state, it's at Tribeca Gallery and Cafe in Watertown. It's at Martha Merrill's in Waukesha. It's at Faith and Giggles in Hartford, and then on the other side of the state where I live, it's available at Northwind Books in Spooner, Wisconsin, and Pearl Street Books in La Crosse, and then several gift shops in the area also.
Now, did you personally have to go and say,
did.
would you like to, how was that?
I did.
Tell us about that.
You know, that was actually quite fun because I got to show the book, I got to see what their impression of the book was.
Yeah.
And everywhere I went, they were so encouraging to local authors, and they were so excited about the idea of helping a new author out. And so it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
So now do you go and keep track, or you email them and see how many sold, they'll bring more?
I either stop
kind of a
in
distribution
person.
function.
Yes,
almost.
yeah. So it's a little bit more than just writing. But I did make some good friends along the way, which is fun, and had set up several author events where I can meet the children and things. So it's been fun.
Now, do you have a website or that you can tell our readers?
I just have my Facebook author page, which is K.M.Waldvogel, because that's how I publish under my initials rather than my full name. And then I'm also available on Goodreads, but I don't have a website set up at this time.
Okay. And that's something to mention. If you're on Amazon and you're looking for the local authors, go to Amazon and follow, look up 3 Ghosts, and then you can follow and have, find out more information about you.
Now, are there any plans for more books?
I just
That
completed.
Child gonna someday come back and say,
now it's just
I've been wronged.
the one little ghost.
The sad little ghost.
All by himself.
Yeah.
I just completed another children's book, or picture book manuscript. I shouldn't say I've completed it, I'm still in the revising stage of it. But that deals with Grandma's clouds. And so it's talking about sitting with my grandchildren and looking at the clouds and finding pictures in them. And then I'm also working on some middle grade writing as well.
Nice.
So you always wanted to be an author?
I did. When I was in 4th grade, I had this wonderful, wonderful teacher. Her name was Mrs. Hintz. And she encouraged me to write. She read some of my writing out loud, and I was very shy. So this was really showcasing me.
Yeah.
And I started writing
at
at that time.
7 or 8?
I was about 8 or 9 years old.
Okay.
And at that time, I started to send my stories to my best friend Mary, and we had to do it by mail because we didn't have email at that time. And so I would send her my stories, and she'd write back what she thought about them. And she's a very good friend of mine, and she still reads all of my writing before anybody else does.
A beta reader, that's excellent.
Yeah. Do you do the pictures, or how do you get the artwork?
I went through my publisher, which was Orange Hat Publishing in Waukesha. And they came up with the illustrator that she just did a marvelous job on it. if I close my eyes, these are the pictures that I saw in my head. And so when I actually saw the illustrations, I was just thrilled.
So
They
did
were
you
just
talk her
wonderful.
through it and say, this is what I see on this page, or how does that work?
There was a little bit of that. You know, I
Mhm.
did have some input to it. I didn't have the final say on
Mhm.
anything, but
Oh.
I did say that, you know, on these pages, this is kind of what I was thinking, and then she would interpret it
Oh, wow.
from there. So it was really a fun process.
Yeah.
So the Orange Hat Publishing had the final say,
Yes, yes.
which is good though in the way in that they're very concerned with quality.
Yes.
And we've talked to other authors that have gone through Orange Hat Publishing, and I think they also like the illustrations
Mhm.
very much.
Yeah, I was very happy with it.
So what do you do to promote the book? You bring it to different places? Have you done author visits?
I've done
Are you
author
available for author
visits.
visits?
Yes, I am. I've gone to the Barron Area School District, and I
Mhm.
went to 3 of the elementary schools there. I've been to a couple different libraries and read my book there. I've got a couple more coming up that I'll be doing, one in Stevens Point and one in Cumberland, Wisconsin.
Nice.
I've done some bookstore visits where I've read the book and then did a meet and greet, and I
Mhm.
have several of those coming up yet in September. And I'm a snowbird, and so I spend some time in Arizona, and I actually have some events scheduled in
Oh.
Arizona when I go back in
Nice.
October. So
So did you travel with a big box of books?
not a huge box, but I always have some books with me when I travel. So yeah.
Something comes up.
always promote.
So you guys drive it?
Sometimes we drive, sometimes we fly. So that course is going to
Yeah.
Affected.
determine how many
Mhm.
books I'm going to take with me.
Mm-hmm.
Which, however, lots of people have stories and they want to have a book, but take that step from having the story to actually publishing it. Kind of a big step. How did you arrive at that? How did you find Orange Hat?
I found Orange Hat through the Lake Fly Literary Conference in
Mhm.
Oshkosh, which, by the way, I love
Great,
attending every year.
Love having you.
Yeah.
And they did a presentation a couple years ago, and
Yes, I was in that one.
I finally got my courage up to submit, so
I
I
thought she was
submitted
really
it.
good, yeah.
And the first step is going to a conference, so
The
right?
first step is, yes. Another thing that I found interesting was to, even though it's a picture book, and I think it's only 300 and some words, you know, it's not that
Mhm.
much, how helpful it is to be in writing groups.
Yeah.
Because when I wrote it and I read through it, I thought it was perfect. You know, I
Yeah.
sent it to several friends,
Uh-huh.
and, you know, maybe a couple tweaks, but that was
Uh-huh.
it. But then when I took it to my writing conference in Wisconsin,
Mhm.
they offered some suggestions, and then I took it to my writing group, I should
Right,
say,
yeah.
not
Mhm.
conference. My writing group in Arizona, and they made some suggestions, and it came out as a much stronger story.
So you have writing groups in both places?
Yes.
Nice.
And so, how many people are in your group? What's the name of? Do you have a name? Where do you meet?
I do. The Wisconsin group is called Yarn Spinners,
Mhm.
and we meet twice a month in Hayward, Wisconsin.
Mhm.
And the group in Arizona is called Scottsdale, or the Scottsdale Writers Group. And that one is really interesting to see because it can vary from having 10 people
Mhm.
at one meeting to, in the wintertime, it can be 25 people showing up. So that's been,
We have that in
Quite a
ours too.
difference.
It's always a surprise.
yes.
And then you have people who bring like science fiction and people who bring
Yes.
poems. It's really
Memoirs,
interesting.
children's literature.
Yeah.
So, what is your next book that you're looking at? Like, do you have an idea what the theme is and what's going to take place?
Well, my middle grade books,
Mhm.
I enjoy historical fiction very much.
Okay.
And I
Oh.
especially like American history,
Mhm.
the Revolutionary War.
Oh.
And so one of the books for middle grade is devoted to women of the American Revolution that are
Mhm.
not very well known.
Mhm.
Some were spies, some were soldiers.
Oh, so you have to do some research.
Yeah. And then the one that I'm working on, I'm starting right
Mhm.
now, is historical fiction, and it deals with a group of students on a field trip who get transported back to the time
Oh,
of the
neat.
American Revolution.
Excellent. I think that checks several boxes for an interest.
Yeah.
You know, you have more interest in the influence that women have had that haven't necessarily been in history books, and
And middle grade is really big right now. I know some of the top authors like Patterson are kind of focusing on middle grade too, because it's such a great area.
And I think you lose a lot of readers around the middle grade
I agree.
age, so it's nice to have a variety of books that will catch someone's interest.
Are you thinking you're going to publish it the same way? Same process? Were you pretty happy?
I was
You
very
gonna do it
happy
different?
with it. I'm not sure which direction I'm going right now. I've got everything open.
Yeah.
And just see how it goes. But
There's a lot of options out there right now.
There are.
For anybody.
Yeah.
I mean.
But especially going out and going to the bookstores and meeting people, you know, maybe you're doing everything that a a different publisher, you know, would be doing,
Yeah.
would want, you know, or not be doing, and you wish they would be
Yeah,
doing it, and you're
that's
just
true.
doing it for yourself.
Now, do you have a business plan, or are you on? Do you have? How often do you write? Do you have a schedule?
I can't say that I have a definite schedule, but I do write several times a week. When we're in Wisconsin, my husband goes into work on occasion, and so it's pretty quiet. I can do my writing at that time. When we're in Arizona, he can work remotely, but that means he's at our house, and so it's not always as quiet.
So you need it quiet when you're writing?
I do.
Do you have a certain spot that you write? Do you write it by hand, or do you do a computer?
I do it by computer now. I used to write everything by hand, and I've conditioned myself, I guess, to go on the computer and cut and paste a lot of things from one area to another, which is a lot easier than my drawing my lines up and crossing things out.
And then for editing, it makes it a lot easier.
Yes, it does.
Especially if you're going to send it to a group.
What is your writing process, including what is your editing process?
I normally write a chapter, and then I'll set it aside for a couple days, and I'll reread the chapter and go through and make revisions or edits the way that I like first. And then I will take it to one of my writing groups, and they'll tear it apart and make some suggestions.
That's a good writing group.
It is.
Yeah,
It's an excellent
that's what you
group.
want.
And so then I'll go through again and really focus on what they had said, you know, expand this area or cut this down. But trying to stay true to the story, you know, and making the characters really fully developed, and checking out my research, because sometimes they call me out on that and say, did they really talk that way?
Right, yeah. Did they really wear that?
Yes.
And that kind of breaks the rule where people say, get it down first, write it. So how does that breaking that rule work for you?
It just focuses me a little bit more, you know. I know that when I'm done with one chapter, then it feels pretty polished. And
It's
then
kind of stop worrying about that and move on.
right, but then when we, you know, go to another venue, when I go to Arizona, for example, I take those same chapters to the Arizona.
So do they look at every single chapter, or just certain ones that you might feel, you know?
Most of the
about?
time, it's going to be every single chapter. There are some that I'm going to say, you know what, this one is exactly the way that I want it. But for the most part, I ask them to go through everything. I want to be sure that I'm thorough. I want to be sure that I'm not missing something. So,
Especially with historical. I know some people get really picky with historical. Like, especially for romance, which is my genre, is the historical romances are, oh, you got the Duke's title wrong, he's the this, you know. Is there anything we've missed that you want to talk about?
well, other than my book, Three Little Ghosts, I think that this is an excellent time of year to be showing it to
Oh.
kids.
Good timing, yep.
And, you know, Halloween is just around the corner, and I think that people will enjoy it.
Yep. So do you see yourself more as going on with the middle school stuff now, or are you going to go back and forth?
I think I'm going to go back and forth. My grandchildren are still quite young. The oldest
Do
is
they know
now
us
7.
about them?
Yes.
They do.
Yes,
Yeah.
they do.
Okay.
And actually, the oldest at the time that this was published, which was about a year ago.
Mhm.
She was 6 and she was looking through the book and she asked my son, "Did Grandma draw the pictures too?"
Mhm.
And he said, "No, Grandma wrote the story." And she was, "Oh, she didn't do the pictures."
Oh. Now you've got to brush up. That's a whole nother
Right.
skill. though.
Yeah. I had an assignment to do, and I drew the pictures
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
You get your book in every store that you went to, or there's some that said no? How many stores did you go to?
Yeah, it seems like a lot.
Oh, it was actually quite a few. I was turned down from 2 stores. One in, I wasn't so sure that he would accept it just
Mhm.
because when I looked at the type of books that were for
Mhm.
sale there, I thought, I'm not sure that a Halloween picture book is
Mm-hmm.
going to be for them. They had a lot of board books
Oh,
for
yeah.
children, but
Okay.
not necessarily this type of book. And then the other one that told me no has asked me to come back and look at. She's
Oh.
going to look at it a second time. So I'm hoping that she'll be, willing to take it now that it's closer to Halloween.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
How
Do you ever
about
do
this?
like farmers markets or anything, or any direct sale?
I think I have done one example of that this year, but I would like to do a few more than that.
Yeah.
And when I go to the libraries, a
Mhm.
lot of times people will approach me and ask about buying the book for me. So
Mhm.
that's
Oh,
worked out
nice.
too.
Yeah.
Why do you want to do more farmers markets? and
I think you
such-
get to see a lot more people.
You do, yeah.
And a variety of people that they like to pick up a holiday book,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm.
depending on the type of market that you're at, that fits in pretty well with that.
I think Halloween is the biggest holiday for spending after Christmas.
Okay.
I read that
Mm.
recently. So, yeah, holidays.
Little fall festivals
Oh,
Yes.
we've
Yep.
got a ton of them around
and
Wisconsin.
something to read to get the children even more amped up for Halloween.
And a lot of the people that I've been selling to have been grandparents, and they said instead of buying
Oh.
candy for the kids for
Oh.
Halloween,
Nice. Yeah.
let me
Put
try
it-
something different with them.
So tell us how you get the book formatted. We know you worked with the publisher, but how does that work? Do you have to come up with a certain number of pages, or?
Well, I was looking at the number of words, which
Mhm.
with a children's picture book is normally less than 500 words.
Mm-hmm.
And like I had told you, I really thought that the story itself was polished, and then I took it to my 2 groups, and they told me it wasn't, and I did some things with that. Well, then when I went to Orange Hat Publishing, they had me work with an editor,
Mm-hmm.
and the editor, again, had some input
Mhm.
saying, add a little bit more about this part of the story,
Mm-hmm.
and tell me about what the ghosts do
Mm-hmm.
here. And so then I expanded a little bit more, and I think what they were getting at was that you get to between 26 and 32 pages when you're done with that.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so that's how it worked out.
Mm-hmm.
Now when we set it out, they asked for my, how did I envision it?
Mhm.
How many words or what words on what page.
Yeah.
And then I think they just took it from there as to, well, I think it'll work better if we do it this
Mhm.
way a little bit, but I can see what you're looking at here.
So they moved some of the words to a different page.
Yes, yes.
It's almost like flash fiction. You said it was 300,
Mhm.
telling that whole story in a very short.
Yes, and this is a rhyming book, and so
Yeah.
it was a matter of making sure that the rhymes made sense on each page,
Mhm.
that you're looking
Wow.
at what is going to be illustrated there, along with the
Mhm.
words that are there.
And what was the timeline from contacting the publisher to having the book in your hand?
They did it actually very quickly. I was surprised because the Lake Fly conference is in May,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't wait very long before I submitted it to them, and the book was actually published in September.
Oh,
Wow.
So,
That's good.
but they did tell me that, this is a little quicker than we normally do it, but we're going to try
So
to
don't
get this
expect
done.
it next time.
Yeah, we're going to try to get it done in time for Halloween, and they did. They had it finished by September 8th.
Wow. That's nice.
Do you have any input into the back of the book? What is on the back? Oh, just a little.
A blurb.
3 little ghosts huddled together to plan a special Halloween night. Will they spook and scare like usual, or will they decide it's time for a change? Follow these little ghosts on their quest for a happy Halloween adventure. So just like any blurb to entice them, find out, want to know, answer a question, find out what happens. Do you have any input on that?
Yes, as a matter of fact, they came up with something and they asked me to write it in my own words, and so this is what I
Nice.
came up with then.
Very good.
But what I didn't mention with the book, with the illustrations, is that the illustrator contacted me and asked, could she put a little black cat on many of the pages, kind of hidden in some, almost like a Finding Waldo,
Right,
you know,
yes.
Where's Waldo? And so for many of the pages, there's a little black
Oh,
cat.
I didn't notice that. I bought the
that's
book
in there.
for my grandkids when I have grandkids, but
Mhm.
I have to look at that.
So not on every page, but on quite a few of them, you'll see a little black cat
Oh.
hovering around.
Good. We talked to another author who did the same thing, I suppose, especially with rereading.
Yeah,
Yes.
you
You're
want to
going to
have
reread
something
it
else
and
to.
then have them go back and spot something new.
Yep.
Find a little black cat. All right, well, it was great talking to you. Thanks for joining us today, and thank you for watching.
Thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed it.